Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about Episode 7 of Season 5 of Star Wars The Clone Wars, called A Test of Strength. Well, first of all, I got to start out by admitting that I was wrong. It looks like we will be spending a little bit more time with the Jedi younglings. I thought last week's episode was just kind of going to be a one-off, but it looks like these are characters who are going to be around for a little while longer. And well, I do like the Jedi younglings introduced here. They all seem like nice additions to the Star Wars lore. I'm just a little worried that this is what we're going to be looking at is in the future. And keep in mind, I avoid spoilers for shows like this, so please don't send me any spoilers or post them in the comments. If you do, I'll delete them. Anyway, so I'm just sort of worried that this is going to be the kids next episode are just basically going to decide against all logic to go off and save Ahsoka themselves. And to put it bluntly, if Hondo loses to a bunch of kids who are not even full-on Padawans, then it's really going to be very hard to take him seriously as a villain or as a character in general in the future, seeing as how in the season premiere, he and his crew ran off two Sith Lords, Darth Maul and Savage Opress. Now, granted, they had Obi-Wan Kenobi around to help him out, but still, if he could do that and then he loses to some kids, man, that's that's just pretty pathetic on an epic level. That's like the Star Trek: The Next Generation episode Rascals level of pathetic. And if you've seen that episode, you know what I'm talking about. If not, that's an episode of Next Gen you would be well advised to skip. But anyway, let's get into it. Now, of course, the big deal with this episode is our special guest star this episode, playing the voice of the robotic Professor Hugh Yang. Yes, Hugh Yang, that's how you say it, is none other than David Tennant. I only found out that he was going to be on the show a few days ago, and if you're following me on my Twitter feed, I sent that out there to kind of get some people hyped about this because I was just so on for this. And of course, David Tennant is best known as the 10th Doctor on Doctor Who. And I gotta say, I loved his Doctor. He was absolutely phenomenal in the role. You know, not to take anything away from Christopher Eccleston, but to me, it was really David Tennant who made New Who really just the absolute phenomenon that it has become, which is so great because I've been a fan of Doctor Who since I was like 15 years old, watching old Tom Baker episodes on my local PBS station. So, and of course, by that time, Doctor Who had kind of been off the air for several years, and it really sort of pop culture wise fallen off the radar of a lot of people, but now that is in no way, shape, or form true at all. We've got Matt Smith doing an absolutely fantastic job. Doctor Who is more popular than ever all over the world. It is fantastic. And the way Hugh Rang is written, you know, this very old, very wise being who very casually tosses off references to amazing, fantastic sounding things and has a somewhat offbeat personality. I mean, you could tell this was totally written to play to David Tennant's strengths as an actor. And you really just cannot deny that the man is a very good actor. I mean, he's did such great work on Doctor Who. He did a really great job as the villain Barty Crouch Jr. in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. You know, I just cannot say enough good things about them. The man is just a wonderfully talented actor, and this is again the continuation, if you've been watching some of my other reviews, of us seeing guys from Doctor Who coming over and doing more stuff on American TV. You know, we had Christopher Eccleston on Heroes. We've of course we got David Tennant here. He did a lawyer show or a pilot for a lawyer show in America that apparently didn't get picked up a couple of years back, but you know, whatever. And as I keep repeatedly mentioning in my Arrow reviews, we have John Barrowman from Torchwood over there. So, you know, this is really a great time to be a fan of Doctor Who in general. And again, just actually seeing a character, an actor from that, making the transition over into Star Wars. To the best of my knowledge, this is a first. We've had guys from Star Trek, like Ethan Phillips. He did some voice work in the original Knights of the Old Republic game. We of course had George Takei, who earlier did guest star on Clone Wars. The fellow who did the voice of Carth Onasi in the original Knights of the Old Republic. He was a semi-reoccurring character on Star Trek Voyager. I keep wanting to call his character Jonas Quinn, but I know that's the guy from Stargate SG-1. It was a name that sounded vaguely similar to that. I'm sorry, I haven't really watched Voyager in a really long time. But anyway, to kind of bring it back to what's going on here, I definitely have no complaints about David Tennant's voice of the droid here. He's got Hugh Yang is a very interesting character. And kind of going back to the reference I made to David Tennant being in Harry Potter. Well, basically, he's Jedi Ollivander, the guy in the Harry Potter universe who helps young wizards pick out their wands and remembers everybody's wand that he's ever dealt with. And, this is essentially what David Tennant's playing. And, I don't have a real problem with this. It's a very interesting addition to the Star Wars lore. I like the fact that he mentions that he's been on that ship serving the Jedi Order for 1,000 years. Now, keep in mind, he does say he's been on the ship for 1,000 years. From the looks of him, it's entirely possible that he's been around serving the Jedi Order in some other capacity for longer than that. But if you're familiar with your Star Wars lore, 1,000 years ago would be the time of the New Sith Wars, the Brotherhood of Darkness, the Army of Light, the end of the Old Republic, and the formation of the New Republic under the Ruusan Reformations. And of course, if you are not a major geek of Star Wars lore, that probably meant absolutely nothing to you. I will just say that it's actually a very, very significant time in the history of the Star Wars universe that, surprisingly enough, is really only getting fleshed out now, especially in the Star Wars Knight Errant comic books. If you haven't read those, do check them out. They're written by John Jackson Miller. He did the Knights of the Old Republic comic books, which I cannot express how much I love those. He also wrote Lost Tribe of the Sith. He's really one of the best Star Wars writers out there currently. But I do have a feeling that this is a character who we might see get picked up to greater detail in the Star Wars expanded universe as things go on. But of course, with the recent edition announcement of the the new Star Wars movies, they've confirmed that the fellow who wrote Toy Story 3 is writing Episode 7. Exactly what's going to be going on Star Wars history-wise is probably going to be even more fluid than it has been in recent years. But I have a feeling that anything that occurs before Episode 1 is probably reasonably safe. So now that I've finished bashing the non-major Star Wars geeks over the head with disturbing amounts of Star Wars trivia and my gushing over how awesome David Tennant is, perhaps it's time to move on to some other aspects of this episode. As I did mention last episode, it is canon in Star Wars that Wookiee Jedi are extremely rare. I did enjoy seeing that this acknowledged when Hugh Rang points out to Guji that Wookiee Jedi are very rare. I do like that he compliments him and he says, "Oh, your people must be very proud." I don't think it's really ever been really touched on what Wookiees' attitudes towards Jedi are. So this sort of gives the impression that it's probably very positive. Now, that's probably not surprising. It is stated in the episode movie in the Star Wars movies. I can't remember if it was episode 2 or 3. Yoda explicitly says that he has very good relations with the Wookiees. And if you delve into the Star Wars lore, you find out that one of these reasons that he probably has it is because Yoda was the Jedi Watchman of Kashyyyk. And short version, Jedi Watchmen are Jedi whose job it is to basically look out for potential recruits to the Jedi Order as potential younglings to be recruited into the Jedi Order. Now, how they get recruits to the Jedi Order is a lot more complicated than that, and various Jedi titles also complicated, not really relevant to what we're going on here. But again, I do enjoy that they did make that acknowledgement and made that very firm, unquestionable part of Star Wars lore. I think it's a good thing. Uh, I think it's a good thing. Yes, that's a terribly wonderful and insightful comment that I'm sure deeply added to your understanding and enjoyment of this episode. You guys are going to have to excuse me. I've been sick the last few. I've been sick part of this week. I'm still not 100% just yet. Anyway, speaking of Star Wars lore, it is mentioned that Hondo and his guys are attacking the training ship to get their hands on Kyber Crystals. Kyber Crystals are indeed a part of Star Wars lore. They have their origins in the Star Wars comics, but they've been mentioned and acknowledged in the role-playing games. I believe you can even acquire them in a couple of the Knights of the Old Republic games. No, Knights of the Old Republic 2, you can definitely get them. And you can even get them in the Star Wars The Force Unleashed to use in Galen Merrick, aka Starkiller's lightsaber. And the basic... and there's quite a bit of lore associated with Kyber Crystals, which I think I've been a little too heavy on the lore this review already. So if you want to know more, hit up Wikipedia. There's a really nice article that goes into the history of the Kyber Crystal quite extensively. The short version is it's exactly what Hondo says. They are extraordinarily powerful crystals. And powerful enough to, let me put it this way, Kyber crystals are enough to make even Darth Vader sit up and take notice. So Hondo's really not joking around that these things are powerful and valuable. Now, let's briefly talk about Petrol. He's the rather headstrong sort of young human Jedi. I kind of wish they'd found a slightly different name for him. I just hear his name, I keep thinking of petroleum. But anyway, Petrol is he's actually kind of, I think, to me, the most interesting out of the Jedi younglings. You know, last episode it was really about him learning to overcome his own selfishness. And here we see him, he's still kind of a cocky kid. He talks about wanting to duel and defeat Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, take a moment to understand that it's established in the expanded universe that Obi-Wan Kenobi is one of the greatest duelists in the entire Jedi Order. He is considered to be the Jedi Order's #1 master of the Soresu style of lightsaber dueling, which is one of the most common forms of lightsaber styles used in the Jedi Order. So seriously, he's dreaming pretty big here. This is like some 12-year-old kid talking about how they're going to go out and take down like one of the top guys in the UFC or something like that. So Petro's dreaming pretty big there. But he does display a pretty surprising amount of ingenuity. That trick that he pulls on the pirates with the lightsaber, you have to give him credit for that. That was really smart. He completely played the big chubby pirate, and he really saved the day on that one. Which, of course, just makes it all the more tragic that in the not-too-distant future, next Sunday AD, Darth Vader and the Stormtroopers will murder Petrol and all his friends, almost certainly. Star Wars, it brings you happiness, doesn't it? Okay, one other thing that I wanted to talk about is when they start using the smoke bombs on the younglings to smoke them out. Now, another thing that is well established in Star Wars lore is that Jedi can use the Force to control their breathing and basically sort of endure things like smoke or toxins in the air for brief periods of time. Now, and this is actually, it's not said in the movies, but it's just sort of established in like the novelization and other EU stuff, that this is kind of how Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn were able to partially deal with the gas attack on them at the very beginning of Episode 1. Now, again, you have to keep in mind that these are younglings, so it's entirely reasonable that they may not have mastered that technique yet, or even know it at all. I don't think it's established when kids would learn that, but you'd think that since proper breathing is basically considered a cornerstone of martial arts and things like that, you'd think that's something they'd learn pretty early on, but I think it's forgivable that younglings, especially younglings this age, might not have that sort of technique down. So I don't really have a problem with that. Now, moving on. The last thing I really want to say here is I don't really know what's going to be going on next episode, but if these kids decide to go off and try and rescue Ahsoka themselves, I really have no words for just how insanely irresponsible that is. And again, if Hondo gets taken down by a bunch of elementary school age Jedi, yeah, that's going to be a pretty serious blow to his street cred. But in any case, I'm definitely did enjoy this episode. It of course had David Tennant, which is a huge plus, but there was enough going on. Lore wise, very, very wonderful episode for lore. Some pretty decent action. Continuing to have really good voice acting all over the place. And really just a pretty solid episode. I got no serious complaints about this one, other than I just have some reservations about where we might be going in the future. But we'll deal with that. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Until next time, folks, please comment, rate, and subscribe. You can, of course, follow me on Twitter at Who's Your Jedi. And until next time, take care and have a good one.